and welcome back to the Detours in Music podcast. Today, I'm bringing you an interview with Birch Blundell, Associate Principal Oboe and Principal English Hornist of the Eastern Music Festival Faculty Orchestra.
I am Birch Blundell, and I'm on faculty here at the Eastern Music Festival. And in my non-EMF life, I'm the English horn player for the Northeastern Pennsylvania Philharmonic, and I also freelance all around New York City and the greater New York City region, like Connecticut, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, New Jersey.
Yep. All of the area.
The whole area. So,
can you talk about your start in music?
Sure. My parents were musicians, so music was always around, and my mom was actually a really good piano teacher, particularly for younger kids. So there was always piano in the house when I came home, which is so funny because for years I didn't like the piano, and I realized it's because I heard so much beginning piano. So they were a great influence on me, just being around music in general. And my sister was like a really talented pianist for a while, and I used to like hide outside the room to listen to her practice. She had certain pieces that I loved. And then in middle school, it came time to choose an instrument. Oh yeah, I should say that I did try to play the piano. It was not my thing. But yeah, it came middle school, time to choose an instrument. And I remember us going to like the little like meet the instrument thing. And when they got to the oboe, they were like, well, not many people play the oboe. And it kind of intrigued me. And I asked my mom, well, what's an oboe? And I think she was trying to say it's the duck in Peter and the Wolf. But because she was trying to be quiet and respectful to not interrupt, she was like, it's the duck. It sounds like duck. And I was like, I don't want to sound like a duck. So I picked up the flute because that was shiny and shiny. But then within a year of starting the flute, I started getting a little frustrated with the flute. And particularly trying to read all the high notes was a challenge for me. And they started asking if anyone wanted to play the oboe. And my father had encouraged me to play the oboe because he knew the high school band needed an oboe because he was a teacher in the system. So he knew that it would be handy down the road. And so eventually I volunteered, and they wouldn't let me keep playing flute. Like I had to make a choice between the two because they couldn't take me out of class for 2 lessons. So because I originally was hoping I could just try the oboe and stay on the flute. But that didn't work out so hot. So I just switched to the oboe, and I just kept going with it from there. So.
Was it kind of an easy transition for you, you think?
No.
Okay.
I remember when I first started playing, I would practice like when I practiced because it was
middle school.
6th grade. It was middle school. But when I played my oboe at home, I would do so that if I started feeling like I was going to pass out, I could sit on my bed. So I would stand right next to my bed so that I could sit down because the air use is so different between the two instruments. And when I first started playing oboe, I would get super dizzy, and then they threw me into the band without like much instruction. They were like, here's the music, here's a fingering chart, good luck. So that was really hard. And my first oboe teacher was the trombone band, or he was like the band director, and he played trombone. So that was my first oboe lesson, was with a trombone player. It was a little bit of a rough start.
When did it kind of change for you where oboe was going well and you were thinking of it as like, oh, this is what I'm good at? And
I'm still trying to figure that this is what I'm good at part. No, but I started liking it more. I started taking private lessons in junior high school because maybe it was even the end of middle school. I don't quite remember, but I really wanted to take private lessons. Like I'd wanted to take private lessons forever because, you know, my mom was at home teaching private lessons, and that was like a cool thing in my book. So I wanted to take private lessons, and I finally did, and my teacher was really, really lovely, and she used to have these massive recitals. She had like 25 students, and we had these big oboe recitals, and that was fun, but it wasn't really till I played in an orchestra that I started to want to do more oboe playing, and it was very gradual, so it was over time, and it wasn't until I came here to Eastern Music Festival that I actually decided to go into performance. This was the tilting point. Prior to that, I was thinking maybe music education in general. I wasn't sure.
Did you attend EMF when you were in high school?
I had just finished my senior year of high school.
That's perfect. That's a great time.
It was like that middle time, right, going into college. And at that point, I was heading off to the University of Connecticut to pursue a degree in music education because I'd gotten pretty serious by my senior year. But then I came here, and that really shifted everything. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. No, I think I want to just play. So I got to UConn and my teacher and I, she had been my teacher in high school as well, discussed that I maybe needed to get into a more intense competitive environment in terms of playing. And so I transferred to Oberlin and went from there.
Did you do your undergrad at Oberlin?
Yeah, so I finished my undergrad at Oberlin.
Okay.
So I did 1 year at University of Connecticut and 3 years at Oberlin.
And who did you study with at the time?
So I was with James Caldwell, was my primary teacher. Okay. He had to take a couple sabbaticals while I was there. So Alex Klein was there for a bit, and Lila Storch was there for a bit. And Lila really, she made a huge impact on me. Not that Alex and Jimmy didn't, but Lila was just so inspiring to have a woman at that level teaching me, and she's just a lovely person. She just turned 100.
Wow.
So yeah, it's really cool to have her come in. So I was lucky. I got a nice mix of people, but primarily James Caldwell was my main teacher.
Okay. Is there something that you struggled with in your undergraduate degree that you see other students struggling with, and that's kind of like your sweet spot with people maybe?
Yeah, and it's something I still struggle with. I thought about this when I saw, you kind of sent me some questions ahead of time. Self-doubt would be the number one problem. I just doubted myself so much, and I still do at times. It just was, especially going from a smaller environment to such a competitive studio. The players in that studio at the time were just, they've all gone to amazing careers, and they were incredible musicians even then, and it was overwhelming when I got there. And I just couldn't do so much of what Mr. Caldwell was trying to get me to do because I didn't have the technical capacity to do it. And he had sort of a minimalist approach because he felt that as you wanted to learn, you would learn and you would figure it out. He really liked to facilitate the process of you figuring out a lot on your own. But I was a little floundery at that point, so it took me a little while to pull it together.
Yeah, I think I also experienced that with when I have a question about something, it's like I really want to be told what to do, and there are a lot of teachers or influences that say, oh, you'll figure it out, and it's like, I know that this is your philosophy, but it'd be great if you told me what to do.
Yeah, sometimes you just need a little bit of core guidance, and he did that in some regards and not in others. And he also was the first person who held me to a really high standard. And that was a little new for me. I had been kind of used to oh, hey, you played the oboe, that's great. We're so glad to have it. Whereas he was like, no, this is the musical standard you're going to achieve, and you're not moving on until you get there. We used to do the Barrett etudes, and I think I was stuck on number 14 for 2 months. I still to this day. I just got stuck on the one. But then once I got through it took off. I really pulled a lot together by doing that. So it was, and he never gave you a part assignment until he felt you were ready for it. Parts. So you didn't get a big solo unless he really felt you were ready to do it well.
When you were approaching your graduation, what was your ideas for your future at the time?
I was really lost at that point in my life, to be perfectly honest. I was still torn because I just dropped my music ed part of my degree, and I was still very unsure if that was the right thing to do or not. And I knew I needed more training, and I wanted to perform, but again, that self-doubt, not knowing if it was really right for me, and it was difficult. That was a difficult time for me. I went to Florida State for a year, and though Eric Olson is an incredible, great teacher, the overall school environment wasn't quite the right fit, and so I wound up going on to study with Bert Lucarelli for the rest of my master's degree, and that's where a lot of pieces finally were able to click back into place and click together, was through my work with him.
I guess if you've transferred schools twice in different programs, do you recommend for people, if things are not working out, there is a perfect fit out there and you should find it?
I think there's an optimal fit. I don't think there's a perfect fit. I mean, I finished my master's degree at the Hart School, and that's a fairly small program, but it's a program that you're going to get out of what you put into it kind of situation. And so I really do feel that you have to go for teacher first and find the teacher that's going to bring out the best in you. And that's what going and working with Bert I went specifically to Hart to work with Birch because I had grown up 5 minutes from the Hart school. So I had been exposed to him in high school, and I knew kind of a bit about his teaching style. And I just knew, I was like, that's what I need right now.
Yeah.
So I do think that if where you are is not helping you progress, then that's, a good time to look elsewhere.
Yeah, there's so few things that are in your control, but I suppose in that situation you can take more control. Was there ever a time you considered leaving music?
Yes, constantly. Yeah. Constantly. I had what I called my school bus chasing dreams for many years, like of going into teaching, because teaching was what I originally, when I was a little kid, I thought I would do. Like I used to make up curriculums in the basement, and I had a chalkboard with blind teddy bears, so there were a lot of years where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm totally flailing, and I'm not doing very well at this, and should I keep doing this? And I mean, even now, every once in a while, I'm still like, maybe it's time to do something else. But more and more, I'm coming to realize, like, for whatever reason, this is who I am and what I'm supposed to do. And to stop fighting it and just go practice instead. Yeah. Like, that's kind of the thing. I remember there was a time I moved down to Houston after graduate school. I wanted to study with Bob Atherholt. So I took lessons with him. And I definitely feel like Bob was kind of the final refinement on a lot of things that I'm playing. He was so helpful. I also studied with Robin Huff down there. He was at the Grand Opera at the time. And I remember there was one day I was sitting at my desk. I was like, this is it. I'm throwing in the towel. I'm ready to go. And I got a call, and it was from a conductor in Mexico City who wanted me to come down and work in the summers in Mexico City, which I did for 3 years. And it was amazing. It was amazing. But it was just like, literally, I was about to pack my oboe for the last time. Yeah. And I got that phone call. Yeah. And that's, things like that have happened. Every time I try to quit, something intervenes. So I finally maybe I should stop trying to quit, because some things, or maybe I should, because then maybe I'll get more opportunities. Think through that. When I was in school, it was very much like either you in orchestra or you have failed. And thankfully, a lot of my peers have stepped out of that, done incredible things, and it's really inspiring to see the things people have done. And now through COVID, that is causing even more of that to come out. People are coming with new ways to connect with their audience and be musicians and be complete people too. I did have an orchestra job. I was with the Sarasota Orchestra for several years, and I left that because my sister and her kids and her husband came down to Disney World. I lived 2 hours from Disney. It was awesome. But anyway, they came down, and I was like, oh my gosh, these kids, my sister's kids, are growing up, and I'm missing all of this. And my husband and I had been long distance for several years, and that wasn't looking like that was going to end anytime soon. It just, a whole bunch of things came together to make me realize that for me, a key piece of me feeling whole is my family. And I'd been so far from them for so many years. And then my husband got a job in New York City, which is 2 hours from where I grew up. And it fell into place. I was like, it's time to leave. And I loved my job in Sarasota. I loved the musicians down there. It was an incredible orchestra. The schedule was wonderful. The location was amazing. The musicians in that orchestra are just phenomenal. So it was not an easy decision to leave, but I have no regrets that I did.
Do you have advice on transitioning from one full-time orchestra job to maybe 5 freelance jobs or 10 freelance jobs?
Yeah, my biggest piece of advice was that I got some very big opportunities early on when I moved that I didn't recognize as such. I just didn't even know enough about the scene to realize. So I do have a couple things I wish I had done a little differently, but just being flexible and being very, very professional. Yeah. Because the thing about the freelance scene is you don't have any guarantees. When I was in Sarasota, I was tenured, and that didn't mean I had free rein to behave not professionally. Obviously, I kept myself to a very high professional standard, but it was, my colleagues knew me. So if I had a bad day, if I had an off day, say I had a bad read day, they knew, they played with me enough. They knew, okay, she's just having a bad read day. I was tenured. They're not going to fire me over one bad read day. Freelancing, I feel like it's like being on an audition all the time. Like, you cannot have an off day because some of these people may be hearing you for the first time, and they may have other gigs they're connected to. And
and they know other oboists.
Right, and they know other oboists, and especially in New York, there's tons of oboists. But I actually kind of like that I have to keep my playing so polished all the time, and that I have to be really super hyper ready and do everything I can to play my best at every single thing. In Sarasota, if I had an off day, it was okay. I was going to keep working. In New York, if I have an off day, that could be a problem. I may not get work from those people again. And the problem is we all have off days.
Yeah.
So, that's a tricky situation too, is navigating, like, if you do have an off day and you're, got to adjust to that too. How do you adjust to that? How do you bounce back? How do you recover?
You do a lot of English horn playing.
I do.
And I kind of wonder how that comes up, or tips for keeping yourself in shape on both instruments. Do you recommend people to kind of choose, I'm going to be someone who tries both, or I'm going to be someone who really focuses on English horn? Because I think in school, English horn is not talked about as much in school.
No. Though I think that's changing. I do think there are some places where people talk about English horn a lot.
Yeah.
It is hard to keep both instruments going, though. I will fully admit that. I mean, I think I would be a better oboe player if I didn't play English horn in some regard, just time-wise, practice-wise, because sometimes I forget I play the oboe, and I just play English horn a lot, and then I'm like, oh, yeah, maybe I should practice the other one. So it has to be a pretty conscious effort to keep them both going. Sadly, more often the English horn suffers than the oboe, because I just don't, I got hired to play more oboe than English horn. So sadly, sometimes my English horn gets lonely. Yeah. But then I try to keep it in balance, and I try to play it, at least a few days a week, if I can. Every once in a while it goes longer.
When you were considering leaving music, what is a profession you see yourself doing?
Well, as I mentioned the teaching. Yeah. So that was like the go-to. Lately, it's been music therapy. I've been kind of interested in music therapy, and I actually am kind of thinking down the line, once my daughter gets a little older in high school, that I might want to get that music therapy degree. Yeah. I've worked as a teaching artist for many years, tangentially, so that was actually something I did do. I actually was the director of community engagement down at the New World Symphony for a couple of years. So I've actually done arts administration full out. And I think if I had my fantasy job, it would be being a children's book author. I just would love to just write for children all the time.
You might have just touched on this, but has your career focus changed?
So, when you're in an orchestra, you are a musician in that community, and you're connected to that community. But looking for more avenues in to make deeper connections with the people in that community. Because particularly as an orchestra musician, you can have this moment of like, I'm on stage, I leave, I maybe wave hi to a couple orchestra members as I go by. Audience members as I go by. But you don't have this
a personal
touch. And so I'm looking at opportunities that allow more of that. I want to perform more of that type of performance, like close to home, connecting with people in my neighborhood. One thing I've rattling around my head is trying to do some kids concerts with some friends and things like that. So just the idea of how can I, obviously as a background in community engagement, how can I connect with people? And I think part of it too is I think it's important to start opening a dialogue about mental health issues, emotional health issues. How can music be a healing force in the community? How can music help people better understand their own emotions? Because I think that's why people are drawn to music, is it allows you to connect with uncomfortable emotions often. And sometimes comfortable ones, sometimes happy ones, but sometimes you'll hear a piece, for instance, why is the Barber Adagio for strings so resonant for so many people? Because it allows you to experience a very, very challenging emotion in a very safe way. So I guess the idea of I'm starting to form is this idea of a community musician being someone who has the tools to help people through their choices of repertoire and how they're designing concerts and all of these things coming together. It's glorious to play in one of these really big halls. Like I've had the opportunity to play with some amazing orchestras in amazing spaces, but to be able to go into a smaller venue, a church, a college campus, and get music out to people who aren't going to pay the big ticket prices.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you talk about Saturday night, because the piece I connected the most with on that program was the 7 o'clock shout, was Valerie Coleman, which I did not make it through a single rehearsal of that piece without like crying. I'm sure he saw me. He was probably like, what's going on? Because for some reason, just reading the title, I just didn't put two and two together. And then as we were playing it in the first rehearsal, I realized it was about the 7 o'clock cheer that we had been doing in New York City, which we did for months. So when I realized what was going on in the piece, and she's got in the English horn part, there's like these 7 half notes right before everyone starts yelling the cheer part of it. Yeah. And I like realized there's, that's the clock striking 7. And then I just, every single rehearsal, the tears would start streaming down my face, because there was such an emotional connection to me. And I just feel like when there's that much power in something you're hearing, then to be able to help people come to that, and to take people from where they are too, because we make a lot of assumptions about who will like classical music and who wouldn't, and I think that's a mistake. Yes. Because I think there's something in it for everyone.
How do you define the detour moments of your life?
I think for me, personally, the detour moments are when I thought I was going one direction and then something happened that took me in a different direction. And I always come back to being a musician and playing the oboe. Like it always comes back to me playing the oboe and the English horn. We'll list this two, they're together. But the detour moments are moments where I thought, okay, like for instance, in my master's degree, okay, I'm going to go and do my master's degree. And then I transferred schools. And then in the middle of it, I took 6 months off to go play with a woodwind quintet in Milwaukee and do that for 6 months. And so like all these things kept getting in the way. Or, when I finished my time as a fellow at the New World Symphony and I took on the community engagement position, in large part because I had been highly involved with the program and I had a vision for the direction of that program. And when the job came open, I just felt like I had something to offer. Yeah. And at that point, I didn't have an oboe job, so I'll do this job. And I'm so glad I had the opportunity to do that. But I ultimately did go back to playing the oboe. I mean, I played all the way through then. But so those were the moments that for me, would define as detours, just things where I went a little sideways from where I thought I was going to. Like in Houston, I thought I was just going to go down to study with Bob Atherholt and then, hopefully win an audition. And I wound up starting a doctorate. That was a side step that I wasn't expecting, but it wound up being a really great time. I didn't complete my doctorate, sadly, because I got into New World, but I did enjoy the work I did, and I grew a lot as a player doing that. But those were all little moments where I just wound up someplace I never saw coming. Kind of felt like detours in the time, but then you realize it's just
that is the path.
Right, that is the path. Your path is just going, all sorts of different directions. And, you'll get there. Because I thought the path was go to school, take an audition, win a job, done. Like that's what I thought the path was. And then I realized, no, the path is a little more complex than that.
Yes. What brought you to your job at EMF? I know you came as a camper.
I did. So I was familiar with the program. I remembered what an impact it had on me and what a positive place it was for me. It was the first place I felt people were saying, yeah, you can do this. Not either you can't or you shouldn't. Yeah. Those are the two previous kind of narratives I had gotten on playing professionally. So basically I had another friend at New World who was on the faculty of violinist, and she said, oh, they're having an audition for English horn. You should take the audition. I made the tape, and I was very unhappy with it. Like, I was so miserable with that tape. I wasn't going to send it. And my now husband, at the time was my boyfriend, basically was like, no, you are sending this tape. He forced me. Like, I seem to remember, like, I was like crying. I was like, but it's terrible. I can't send it to them. And he was like, put the tape in the mail. Yeah. So I put the tape in the mail and then shockingly got the job. Because the whole audition at that point was done based on tape and resume. And so I was very lucky to get the job and come back here. And I remember my first year just being in complete and utter disbelief that I was playing with the faculty orchestra, like that I was in terror. There was a little bit of terror in there too, but just being like, I can't believe I'm on this side of this.
Yeah, I think that's really cool that there are a lot of people in the faculty orchestra that did come as campers. Yeah. I like that kind of full circle thing here. What are your current goals, I guess, individually maybe right now, or for music in general?
Because of, everything kind of stopped for a year, and my goal through COVID was just not to lose my playing ability, basically. I just really wanted to be able to keep playing at a high level. So all my practice during COVID was with that aim. I had a few little recording projects away. But so now I'm kind of waiting to see how everything pans out. My goal is always just keep my playing at the highest level I possibly can, and then see what happens.
Because then you can like confidently say yes to things.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the thing. If I know I'm playing at a high level, then whatever comes up, comes up. Like, no matter what you want to do, if you want to be a parent or you want to have other things in your life, I think it's super important just to find that balance. If all you're doing all the time is music,
it's not as fun.
Yeah, you're going to start burning out. And I mean, I know a lot of people who just burn out when they get that hyper-focused. And they've gone on to do some other really cool, amazing things. Sometimes with their playing, sometimes with other stuff. But just be open to being a complete person. And that, again, we talked about this, that we were talking about the mindset of you have to do this one thing and there's only the one path. And there's lots of ways to be a musician and to be a human being. And it's just, especially since COVID, I realized how important it's been for me to have my family, to have I have a daughter, to have that aspect of my life in place, because it really helped me get through everything.
That balance can go in phases in someone's life, like, because when I hear people talk about it, they're like, oh, but you're in school right now, so this is when it can be a little out of balance, or what is balance for me might look a little different. Thank you all so much for listening. Karen is who I've been studying privately with here at Eastern Music Festival, so it was really a great experience for me to get to sit down and talk to her about some of these things outside of playing the oboe. If you'd like to keep up with the podcast, there are multiple ways you can do so. First of all, you can go to our website, which is detoursandmusicpodcast.weebly.com. You could also subscribe to our YouTube channel, also called Detours and Music Podcast. We also have a Facebook page and Instagram account where you can like and follow us. The Detours and Music Podcast is available everywhere that you listen to podcasts, but on Apple Music podcast apps, you can subscribe and rate us. If you ever want to get in touch with me and give more direct feedback, you can email me at detoursandmusicpodcast@gmail.com. As always, thank you for listening, and I hope you catch the next one.